2, 1.
The media suggests that President Trump is cruelly tearing children out of the arms of their illegal immigrant parents. Harvard goes racist, and some leftist columnists celebrate Father's Day by saying fathers are unnecessary. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. Right, so we have tons to get to today. I mean, there is a lot happening, and we are going to get to all of it in just 1 second. First, I want to say thanks to our sponsors over at FilterBuy. So, I'm just going to put this out there. I suspect that you are not sitting around thinking about your air filters because, I mean, let's face it, that's not the most interesting topic. But the reality is that if you're hacking up a lung or you're feeling unhealthy at home, maybe one of the reasons is because you haven't replaced your air filters in forever. I know that we hadn't replaced our air filters in forever until we went to FilterBuy, and FilterBuy made sure that we did, and the air is just that much better. According to the Department of Energy, the most expensive utility for most Americans is their electricity bill. It makes up roughly 9% of their annual housing expenditure. This number is aggravated depending on where you live. Take California, we actually get clobbered on energy bills. Well, adding insult to injury this allergy season has been one of the worst, further straining your system. So you can help lower all of these bills and make the air better by going to FilterBuy, America's leading provider of HVAC filters for homes and small businesses. They carry over 600 sizes. If you're one of those difficult people, they can even make custom filters just for you. Plus, they ship free within 24 hours. And if that isn't enough, all of this is manufactured right here in the United States. So you have no excuse. And set up auto delivery so you don't have to worry about checking those air filters on a regular basis. Instead, they just arrive when they're supposed to arrive. Plus, you save 5%. Save money, save time, breathe better with FilterBuy.com. I know I do. That's FilterBuy.com, FilterBuy.com. Tell them Ben sent you, and we use it here at the Daily Wire offices. I use it at my house as well. FilterBuy.com, FilterBuy.com. Plus, just wanted to make clear to you that our next episode of The Conversation is coming up tomorrow, Tuesday, June 19th, 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific, in which all of your questions will be answered by me, Ben Shapiro, with our host, Alicia Krause. Our live Q&A is available on YouTube and Facebook for everybody to watch. Only subscribers get to ask questions over at dailywire.com. Check out our pinned comments on this video for more information. So go check that out right now. Alrighty, so the big news of the day is that apparently Donald Trump hates children. Now, if you're on the left, this comes as no surprise because you always thought that Donald Trump hated children, right? I mean, that's not a giant shock, but the reality is that Donald Trump supposedly is a guy who wants to remove children from the arms of their parents as those parents cross the border illegally. So you're coming across the border to make a new life for yourself, and you've brought your child, and you're picked up by ICE, and they cruelly take those children and they rip them away from you. They take the children and they rip them away from you. Okay, there is only one problem with all of this. Okay, there's only one problem with all of this. This is just not the case. Okay, the reason I say this is just not the case, I'm going to go through the actual applicable law here so that you know what it is that is going on. Okay, the reality is that the law requires that if you cross the border illegally and we arrest you for it, that your children cannot stay in custody with you. Okay, that's just the way it is. Okay, the way that it is according to the law. Okay, and that is a 2008 ruling from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. According to the law, you are not allowed to take the children and leave them with their parents in custody. Okay, so the Ninth Circuit Court ruled that non-detention of minors applies to accompanied illegal immigrants. The reason this happened is there was an agreement, it's called the Flores Agreement, back from the 1990s, in which the federal government was sued, and they came to a federal settlement, and the federal settlement said that when unaccompanied illegal children come across the border, they have to be released, remanded into the custody of some sort of parental figure or guardian in the United States. And then the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in 2016 ruled that those children actually had to be released, whether or not they came with a parent. So you come across with mommy and daddy, we still cannot keep you in custody for a long period of time. We still have to release you ASAP. Now, the problem with this is this has created a spate of headlines that Donald Trump, because he is more strictly enforcing border laws, that because he is doing that, this means that that he is somehow separating the children from their parents. Again, it is by operation of law that the kids are removed from their parents. It is not Donald Trump decided, I want to remove children from their parents, and therefore I'm cruel and nasty, and that's what I want to do. That's not how any of this works. Rich Lowry has a good column making all of this clear. He points out in his column at National Review today, the Trump administration is not changing the rules that pertain to separating an adult from a child. Those remain the same. Separation happens only if officials find that the adult is falsely claiming to be the child's parent, or is a threat to the child, or is put into criminal proceedings. And it's the last that is operative here. The past practice had been to give a free pass to an adult who is part of a family unit. The new Trump policy is to prosecute all adults. The idea is to send a signal that we are serious about our laws and to create a deterrent against reentry. Illegal entry is a misdemeanor. Illegal reentry, however, is a felony. When a migrant is prosecuted for illegal entry, writes Rich Lowry, he or she is taken into custody by the U.S. Marshals. In no circumstance anywhere in the United States do the marshals care for the children of people they take into custody. The child is taken into the custody of HHS, that's Health and Human Services, who cares for them at temporary shelters. The criminal proceedings are exceptionally short, assuming there is no aggravating factor such as a prior illegal entity or another crime. The migrants generally plead guilty, and they are then sentenced to time served, typically all on the same day, although practices vary along the border. After this, they are returned to the custody of ICE for deportation. If the adult then wants to go home, in keeping with the expedited order of removal that is issued as a matter of course, it's relatively simple. The adult is reunited quickly with his or her child, and the family returned home as a unit. In this scenario, there is only a brief separation. When it does become more of an issue is when parents start claiming asylum. If you claim asylum, adults are going to be detained longer, and the law is that you are not allowed to hold children for longer than 20 days in custody. And that's the Flores consent decree. A ruling by the Ninth Circuit extended the 20-day limit to children who come as part of family units. So even if you would like to hold a family unit together, even if you want the kid to stay with mommy and daddy, you cannot by operation of law. You are forbidden from doing so because the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals wanted to make it less appealing for the government to keep families in custody. They wanted all of these families released into the general population in the United States. Rich Lowry writes, the clock ticking on the time the government can hold a child will almost always run out before an asylum claim is settled. The migrant is allowed 10 days to seek an attorney. There may be continuances or other complications. This creates the choice of either releasing the adults and the children together into the country, pending the adjudication of the asylum claim, or holding the adults and releasing the children. If the adult is held, HHS places the kid with a responsible party in the U.S., ideally a relative. Even if Flores didn't exist, the government would be very constrained in how many family units it can accommodate. ICE only has about 3,000 family spaces in shelters. It is also limited in its overall space at the border, which is overwhelmed by the ongoing influx. So family units can go home quickly. All they have to do is not plead asylum, and they can all go home together. Also, there's a better way to claim asylum. So the separation of parents from children only happens if you are arrested. If you walk up to a border station in the United States, you don't go between border stations. You just walk up to, for example, the U.S.-Mexico border, down near San Diego. If you just walk up to that border and you say, I need to claim asylum, you will not be arrested. You're only arrested if you try to cross between the borders, because then the idea is probably you're lying to get into the country. Otherwise, you should just walk up to Border Patrol, not along the border, but in specific border stations, which everybody knows where they are, and then you claim asylum, and then you're not arrested at all. Then you get to stay with your kids. Right? Every indication is that the migrant flow to the United States is discretionary. It nearly dried up at the beginning of the Trump administration when migrants believed they had no chance of getting into the United States. Now it's going in earnest again because the message got out that despite the rhetoric, the policy at the border hasn't actually changed. Even if a migrant does have credible fear of persecution, writes Lowry, there is a legitimate way to pursue that claim. It does not involve entering the United States illegally. First, such people should make their asylum claim in the first country where they feel safe, for example, Mexico. Second, if for some reason they are threatened everywhere but the United States, they should show up at a port of entry. That's what it's called, the technical term, a port of entry, and they make their claim there rather than crossing the border illegally. There's significant moral cost to not enforcing the border, as well as Rich Lowry points out. If you just start releasing people in general into the middle of the country, lots more people are going to start crossing into the country illegally. And it is well worth pointing out that under the Obama administration, and under the Bush administration, really, immigration surges were rooted in government policy. So July 7th, 2014, this is from the New York Times. It was one of the final pieces of legislation signed into law by President George W. Bush, a measure that passed without controversy along with a pension bill and another one calling for national parks to be commemorated on quarters. This is a piece of legislation we're very proud to sign. A White House spokesman, Tony Fratto, told reporters December 28th, 2008, this program has been very effective around the world in trying to stop trafficking in persons. Now the legislation, this is the New York Times, right? Not Breitbart, not a right-wing publication. Now the legislation, enacted quietly during the transition to the Obama administration, is at the root of the potentially calamitous flow of unaccompanied minors to the nation's southern border. Originally pushed by a bipartisan coalition of lawmakers, as well as by evangelical groups to combat sex trafficking, the bill gave substantial new protections to children entering the country alone who are not from Mexico or Canada by prohibiting them from being quickly sent back to their country of origin. Instead, they have an opportunity to appear in an immigration hearing and consult with an advocate. This, of course, it puts strains on the system, lengthens the amount of time that these kids are in the system in the first place. So there are a bunch of lies that are being told right now, and we'll go through a lot of the lies that are being told by the media in just a second. But some of the lies being told are that Trump is randomly deciding to separate kids at the border. He doesn't have to do that. He does have to do that by operation of law. The only thing the Trump administration is doing differently is they are treating everyone who is crossing the border illegally as an illegal immigrant for prosecution, for purposes of prosecution. And then because you're doing that, the kids can't stay in custody with the parents longer than 20 days. And that is operation of law once again. Now, the media are going nuts over all of this, and they're making a huge fuss out of all of this. And they're showing up at the border, and they are showing up at these particular border stations where the kids are being held. The kids are being held separately in what are cages, essentially. Now, when they say cages, it makes it sound like, it's like a chicken coop, like it's tiny. It isn't, but of course, technically they are cages because it's chain link fence separating people. So the administration has tried to fight back against the cages descriptor, saying the kids are being treated pretty well. The kids are being treated by some accounts well, by some accounts not as well. Apparently, one of the regulations on the books is that federal employees are not allowed to touch the kids for fear of lawsuit. So that means that some of the illegal immigrant children are changing the diapers of other illegal immigrant children they don't even know. The conditions are not good. All of this is underfunded. Congress could solve all of this, by the way. And Congress could solve all of this today. All they have to do is pass a law that says that if you come into the country illegally with your parents and you get to stay together. Right? You get to stay in custody together. Right? That would be the way that you fix this law. And then it's the parents' option whether they want the kids released to the custody of the HHS or released to the custody of a family member already in the United States, but they get to stay with the parents otherwise. Right? Congress can do that tomorrow, and Congress should do that today or tomorrow. Apparently, I'm hearing from the Speaker's office, from Speaker Ryan's office, that's exactly what Speaker Ryan is going to pursue, plus funding for expanded facilities to ensure that parents can stay together with their kids when they come across the border. So all of this is in the process of getting solved. I do find it somewhat suspicious that the media have decided to jump both feet on the bandwagon as though this is some sort of great human rights catastrophe brought on by the Trump administration, when, of course, all of this started under the Obama administration, or at least it was happening under the Obama administration. Brandon Darby from Breitbart, he had a bunch of photos. I remember when I was working at Breitbart still, he put out all of these photos. Right? These are all photos of a bunch of people, including children, who are at these detention facilities. It doesn't look that great, right? I mean, this is from 2014. Right? You can see all the photos. It's from 2014, and it's children who are separated from males, who are separated from females. These facilities are overcrowded. Right? All of this was happening in 2015. There's nothing new happening here. But the implication is there's something new happening here because it's Trump. And that, of course, is not true. Right? That's just not true. We're going to get to the media coverage of this in just a second and talk about the administration's response and really what the administration did do wrong in just a second. First, I want to say thanks to our sponsors over at Wink. So, all of this makes you want to drink, doesn't it? I mean, politics is not the kind of thing that makes you want to be sober. But the reality is that if you just want to kick back at night and have yourself a nicer evening, well, that's what Wink is for. Well, we've all taken time to wring ourselves out from the holiday parties halfway through the year, and you deserve Wink. Wink makes it easy to discover great wine. Wink's wines expert select wines matched to your taste, personalized for you, shipped right to your door, starting at just $13 a bottle. There's nothing like coming home to a box of delicious Wink wine selected just for you. So here's the way it works. You go to the Wink Palate Profile Quiz, and you answer a bunch of simple questions that nobody would ever seek to ask you, really. Like, how do you like your coffee? Or do you like blueberries? And then Wink sends wines curated directly to your taste. The more wines you rate, the more personalized your monthly selection. So it's like Netflix, except for wine. Each month there are new delicious wines. Their insanely popular Summer Water Rosé is making the rounds right now. No membership fees. You can skip any month. You can cancel anytime. Shipping is covered, and if you don't like a bottle they send you, they replace it with a bottle you will love. No questions asked. Discover great wine today. Go to trywink.com/Ben. That's TRYWINC.com/Ben for $20 off. That's trywink.com/Ben. And you get $20 off your first shipment. Again, trywink.com/Ben. It's fantastic. It makes a great gift. If you're late for Father's Day, get your dad a subscription to this. It's really fantastic. Trywink.com/Ben. People around the office have tried Wink wine, and those are days when we don't get a lot of work done. So trywink.com/Ben, and you get to try it for $20 off your first shipment. Trywink.com/Ben. All right, so the Trump administration, with all this said, that the Trump administration is basically following the law, and if you don't like the law, change the law. The Trump administration did do a couple of things wrong here. So the first thing they did wrong is they sent out Stephen Miller and John Kelly to say incredibly dumb things. So Stephen Miller, who's sort of the president's immigration guru, I know Stephen, I think Stephen's a nice guy, but Stephen made the big boo-boo of going out in public and saying that we want to use the separation of children from parents as a deterrent to prevent people from crossing the border. Okay, you should not be using the suffering of children as a deterrent to keep parents from crossing the border. That's not the way to do this. The deterrent to crossing the border is that you get sent back. It should not be that you take kids away from their parents. This causes psychological harm and psychological damage. It shouldn't be a situation, as we've heard from some of these reports, where the parents aren't even told that they're being separated from the kids, that the kids are sort of taken away, and then 2 hours later, the parents are told, oh yeah, by the way, you're not going to be able to see your kid again. Right? That kind of stuff is a problem, and that kind of stuff is frightening and should not be happening in the United States. To say that you're using that as a deterrent effect, that's a serious problem, and that should not be done. That's stupid. Jeff Sessions also came out, and he quoted the Bible. He said, listen, the Bible says that you should abide by the law.
If you violate the law, you subject yourself to prosecution. And I would cite you to the Apostle Paul and his clear and wise command in Romans 13 to obey the laws of the government, because God has ordained the government for his purposes. Orderly and
know Senator Sessions or Attorney General Sessions, and I think on some of his immigration policy, he's been exactly right. You probably shouldn't be grinning so broadly when you talk about separating families from their children. It's just not smart. For folks who can't see the video, he's standing there and he's grinning pretty broadly as he quotes the Apostle Paul. Again, you don't have to do that. Just say, abide by the laws of this country. I mean, this is a very serious topic, obviously. Well, the Homeland Security Secretary Bridget Nielsen, Kirstjen Nielsen, she has come forward and she says that the reporters and by members of Congress, the reporting is not true on this, and she's correct. She says, this misreporting by members, press, and advocacy groups must stop. It is irresponsible and unproductive. As I've said many times before, if you are seeking asylum from your family, there's no reason to break the law and illegally cross between ports of entry. This is exactly right. Right now, the policy is if you cross between ports of entry, we will arrest you and we'll prosecute you. But if you show up at one of the border ports of entry, then you'll be treated as an asylum seeker and you won't be separated from your kids. And she continues, she says, you are not breaking the law by seeking asylum at a port of entry. And she continues as well. And she says, for those seeking asylum at ports of entry, we have continued the policy from previous administrations and will only separate if the child is in danger. There's no custodial relationship between family members or if the adult has broken a law. And she finishes up. She says, DHS takes very seriously its duty to protect minors in our temporary custody from gangs, traffickers, criminals, and abuse. And then she finishes by saying, we do not have a policy of separating families at the border, period. Everything she says there is factually true. Now, the media are lying about this. And in just a second, I'm going to show you how the media are lying about all of this and turning it into a major issue when, in fact, this is an easily solvable issue if we could just get past all the politics. So we begin with Chuck Todd. So Chuck Todd has on Kellyanne Conway on NBC News on Sunday. And he says that the goal of the Trump administration is to hold children hostage to get Democrats to pass some law. That obviously is not the goal here. The operation of law, it's not up to Trump. The operation of law says that if you arrest a parent illegally crossing the border, the kid cannot be held in custody for longer than 20 days. That is the law. Trump did not make up the law. Trump cannot violate that law unless he just decides to release illegal immigrant parents who are crossing between border ports of entry illegally. Yeah, all the lies that are being told today are really astonishing, and Chuck Todd forwards that game here.
And this is going to sound harsh, but it sounds like you're holding these kids hostage to get the Democrats to the table to pass some law. You just laid out a very compassionate case for why. I understand. You just laid out with a lot of compassion and a lot of empathy in there. But it's not very empathetic. Then the most traumatic thing to do to a kid, separate them from their parents once they've made
your solution, Chuck. So what's your solution, Chuck? Right? This is the part that makes me crazy. The solution that is being proposed by people on the left is that Trump should just release people into the interior of the United States. That is the solution that they are proposing right now. That is not a solution. There are laws on the books. You do not get to cross into the country illegally. Again, we have provisions that say if you come to a port of entry in the United States, then we will treat you like a normal asylum seeker. If, however, you are sneaking through the brush near Sonoma and you just decide to cross the border illegally, not near a port of entry, and we catch you, we're not going to treat you as though you were an asylum seeker, because if you were an asylum seeker, you would have gone to a port of entry. Right? But the media are just lying flat out about this. I will say I thought the most hilarious thing is after Jeff Sessions quoted the Bible to say that people should abide by the law, MSNBC decided to ask, what would Jesus do? So apparently Trump has now won the war on Christmas. Trump has officially won the war on Christmas because he's got the anchors at MSNBC actually reading the Bible. I do enjoy when folks on the left start reading the Bible and they skip over all the parts about, like abortion and same-sex marriage and adultery, and they skip over all of those parts and they go straight to the most vague portions that support their position. So here's Ali Velshi on MSNBC, who I guess went to some sort of seminary, and he did a full segment on MSNBC called What Would Jesus Do About Illegal Immigration?
But Jesus said, suffer little children and forbid them not to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. Let's go to Matthew chapter 25 again, this time verse 40. And the king shall answer and say unto them, verily I say unto you, inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of my brethren, ye have done it unto me. That's just a small sampling of what's in the Bible.
Well, hallelujah. MSNBC calling out the priests and the pastors to talk about everything that's going on the border. Again, you're not going to see them do this with regard to Planned Parenthood. That was the most ironic tweet in all of this. Planned Parenthood tweeted this out. Here's what Planned Parenthood tweeted. They tweeted out, in our hearts and minds today, all of the fathers and parents who have been separated from their children at borders, keep families together. Hashtag Father's Day. And then it says, you deserve to be together regardless of immigration status. Keeping families together is reproductive justice. You kill babies. Okay, that's what Planned Parenthood does for a living. 300,000 unborn children a year. Now, whatever you may say about separating families from children at the border, and again, I think there's an easy congressional fix to all of this that Speaker Ryan's office has told me they're already pursuing today. Even if you believe that that's something that ought to be fixed, what Planned Parenthood does to kids, a lot worse than separating them at the border for a week and a half. Okay, they kill them. So I do love how the left suddenly is interested in God and the Bible when it comes to illegal immigration. By the way, I just want to note this, as someone who's fond of the Old Testament, right? I wear the funny hat on my head because I am fond of the Old Testament. And I like it in the original Hebrew, the hardcore way. And whenever it talks about treating strangers in your land with certain respect, the precondition in all of Jewish law for all of Jewish history is that people have to accept the law of the land. If you violate the law of the land, you're not treated like a stranger in the land, like a ger toshav, right? You instead are treated like somebody who's violating the law of the land. You're treated like a criminal. So to misquote the Bible purposefully is really ridiculous. Now, the worst of all is Kathy Griffin, of course, because Kathy Griffin only makes a headline when she says something absolutely awful. So she decided that she would go off on Melania. She said, F you, Melania. You know damn well your husband can end this immediately. Feckless, complicit piece of bleep. I do love that so many folks on the left are so angry at all the women in the Trump administration. They're feckless and complicit. It's so funny. All those people wouldn't say that Hillary Clinton was feckless and complicit when it came to her husband's exploitation of women. But it's a different thing when you're talking immigration policy and Melania Trump. Like Melania's just going to stroll on into the Oval and suddenly Trump's going to shift his immigration policy because Melania said something. Now, the routine that is making the most headlines today is Laura Bush has an op-ed today that we need to go through in just a second. Plus, you have a bunch of preening Democratic lawmakers I want to talk about. First, I want to say thanks to our sponsors over at Stamps.com. So right now you can get practically everything on demand, right? I get everything on demand. I get my entertainment on demand. I get products on demand. So why are you still taking trips to the post office to mail letters and packages? Doesn't matter how much you love the post office. It's pretty great, but the reality is that you can save a lot of time and money simply by staying in your office and going over to Stamps.com. You can access all the amazing services of the post office right from your desk 24/7 when it is convenient for you. You can buy and print official U.S. postage for any letter, any package using your own computer and printer. The mail carrier picks it up. You just click, print, mail, and you're done. And then go over to Stamps.com. You get a special deal right now. When you use promo code Shapiro, it includes $55 of free postage, a digital scale, and a 4-week free trial, which is pretty amazing. So go check it out right now. When you go to Stamps.com, before you do anything else, click on the radio microphone at the top of the homepage, type in Shapiro, that's Stamps.com, and enter promo code Shapiro. Again, it includes up to $55 free postage, a digital scale, and a 4-week trial. See whether you like it. We use Stamps.com here at the Daily Wire offices. It saves us a lot of time. We don't have to have our employees running over to the post office. It saves me a lot of time at home. Again, you just print it right out onto the envelope, the postage. They give you a postage meter as well. A digital scale, rather, and that allows you to know what kind of postage you need for all this stuff. It's just great. Go to Stamps.com, check it out, and use promo code Shapiro to let them know we sent you, and so you get the special deal. All right, so Laura Bush has now sounded off. Now, I do find this weird. Okay, I really like Laura Bush. I have a lot of respect for Laura Bush. I think she was a very good first lady, but I don't know why it was that Laura Bush was silent about so much of policy under the Obama administration, and now she is speaking out about the Trump administration. I suppose the idea here is that Republicans are supposed to police their own, so when something really bad happens, Republicans are supposed to speak up. That's fine with me, but I think that this particular piece is not supremely accurate. And not only do I think that it's not supremely accurate, I think that it actually forwards some falsehood. So here's what Laura Bush has to say. She says, on Sunday, a day we as a nation set aside to honor fathers and the bonds of family, I was among the millions of Americans who watched images of children who have been torn from their parents. In the 6 weeks between April 19th and May 31st, the Department of Homeland Security has sent nearly 2,000 children to mass detention centers or foster care. More than 100 of these children are younger than 4 years old. The reason for these separations is a zero-tolerance policy for their parents who are accused of illegally crossing our borders. Well, they're not accused. They illegally crossed our borders. I live in a border state. I appreciate the need to enforce and protect our international boundaries, but the zero-tolerance policy is cruel, it is immoral, and it breaks my heart. So, again, here's the problem. I understand empathy. Empathy makes for bad politics. It does. Okay, sympathy makes for good politics. Empathy makes for bad politics. Sympathy is, I feel bad for you. Empathy is, I feel you, meaning I am putting myself in your shoes. Well, how about putting yourself in the shoes of the immigration agent who has to decide whether to release an unvetted illegal immigrant family into the country? Okay, there are stories, by the way, of gangs who have been smuggling children across the border specifically for this purpose because they know that if they have a kid with them, they're more likely to be released into sort of general society. Now, that's a rarity, but it is happening. And we have to be vetting who comes into the country in the first place. Is the policy supposed to be that if you show up with a 6-month-old, that we just release you into the country? Because right now, that's the law. Right now, you have two choices. I can either arrest the parent and separate out the kid, or I can release them into the country. If the idea is you come in with a kid under 4, you get released, how many people do you think are going to rush that border? A lot. A lot of people. This is not to say you should create a policy to deter immigration by separating the kids. Instead, you should change the policy so the kids get to stay with the parents in some sort of custody. That'd be the way to do this. But if the alternative is release a bunch of kids into the middle of the country with their parents, I just don't see that. Here's what Laura Bush writes. She says, our government should not be in the business of warehousing children in converted box stores or making plans to place them in tent cities in the desert outside El Paso. These images are eerily reminiscent of the Japanese internment camps of World War II, now considered to have been one of the most shameful episodes in American history. We also know this treatment inflicts trauma. Interned Japanese have been 2 times as likely to suffer cardiovascular disease or die prematurely than those who are not interned. This is not Japanese American internment, okay? That was taking American citizens and forcibly relocating them to camps when they were integrated into American society already. That they had rights under the U.S. Constitution. The same is not true of people illegally crossing the border. And again, it was the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the most left court in America, that made this policy. It was not Trump. I don't like the inaccuracy here. He can make a case for legislation that fixes all of this without being inaccurate about your reporting. Laura Bush continues, Americans pride ourselves on being a moral nation, on being the nation that sends humanitarian relief to places devastated by natural disasters or famine or war. We pride ourselves on believing that people should be seen for the contents of their character, not the color of their skin. We pride ourselves on acceptance. If we are truly that country, then it is our obligation to reunite these detained children with their parents and to stop separating parents and children in the first place. People on all sides agree our immigration system isn't working, but the injustice of zero tolerance is not the answer. I moved away from Washington almost a decade ago, but I know there are good people at all levels of government who can do better to fix all of this. It says in 2018, can we not as a nation find a kinder, more compassionate, and more moral answer to this current crisis? I, for one, believe we can. Yes, of course we can. But this starts by not being inaccurate about the state of the law. It starts by not being inaccurate about the state of the law. It also starts by not being inaccurate about illegal immigration and the cost of illegal immigration. Now, there's been a lot of talk about illegal immigration increasing crime rates. The data are mixed on all of that. There's been a lot of talk about illegal immigration and its effects on the economy. The evidence suggests that illegal immigrants are more of a drain on the economy than a help to the economy since they don't pay taxes. They pay, state sales tax, but that's about it. But it is certainly true that every crime that is committed by an illegal immigrant inside the United States is a crime that didn't need to happen. For example, over the weekend, authorities said 5 undocumented immigrants are dead following a chase involving Border Patrol agents on Sunday afternoon. Dimmitt County Sheriff Marion Boyd said the crash happened off Highway 85 in Big Wells at about noon. Boyd said agents were chasing the SUV when it lost control and overturned. The vehicle was traveling at more than 100 miles per hour when it crashed. 14 people were inside, including the driver and passenger. 12 immigrants were ejected. 4 died at the scene when the car crashed and rolled over, according to Boyd. A 5th person later died at the hospital. A total of 9 people were transported to the hospital, including 5 who went to San Antonio Military Medical Center. The rest went to local hospitals. The driver is a United States citizen who was among those transported. A Border Patrol agent observed 3 vehicles traveling one behind the other on FM 2664 and suspected a smuggling attempt was happening, the agency said in a statement. The agent was able to stop one of the vehicles and called out a description of the other 2. A second Border Patrol agent was able to pull over the second vehicle. The third refused to stop. The agency said multiple arrests were made in both vehicles. The passenger, also believed to be a U.S. citizen, is currently in custody. Boyd says they need a wall built in this area because this is a real problem in the area. Okay, so while there's a lot of talk about weakening immigration law, we ought to remember that a country worth its salt does have borders. Now, lawmakers are making hay while the sun shines here. So are politicians. General Michael Hayden, who is a member of the Obama administration, I believe. I would have to actually look up his credentials. But Michael Hayden tweeted this out. Like Laura Bush, trying to compare all of this to internment camps. Michael Hayden then tweeted out a picture of the railway station at Auschwitz, right? Like Auschwitz-Birkenau. And he tweeted out, other governments have separated mothers and children. This is so insulting and so insanely stupid. I can't even tell you. It is bad enough to compare this to Japanese American internment camps because it is not similar. Okay, it isn't. But to compare it to the Nazis is just insane. He's a retired U.S. Air Force 4-star general. He's former director of National Security Agency and former director of the CIA is Michael Hayden. The fact that he thinks this just demonstrates the lack of knowledge at all levels of the American government. There was separation of children from parents at Auschwitz, and then both were gassed. Right? Then they gassed every child to death, and they gassed most of the mothers to death as well. That is not the same thing as we're going to put you in protective custody while we take care of your parents' asylum claim. Not quite the same thing at all. But it's just ridiculous. Again, all of this media coverage is ridiculous. All of it is unfair, and all of it is designed to elicit an emotional response when an emotional response may be merited. Right? You can see a reason for being emotional about all this stuff. What you can't see is lying about all of this. And this is indeed lies. I mean, these are lies. Okay, so you're going to have to go over to dailywire.com for the rest of the show live. For $9.99 a month, you get the rest of this show, the rest of Andrew Klavan's show, the rest of Michael Knowles' show. Plus, as I said earlier on the show, we have an episode of The Conversation coming up tomorrow. And that episode of The Conversation will include me taking your questions. When you're a subscriber, you get your questions asked. When you aren't, you don't. You just sit there in chastened silence as I answer the questions of others. If you get the annual subscription, you get this, the very greatest in leftist tears, hot or cold tumblers. It is just fantastic. It is magnificent. When I go to public events, I see people bring them with them. They cherish them. They treasure them. They put them in glass cases so that they're not harmed. That's how great these are. That's how much people love the tumblers. You get that for $99 a year, cheaper than the monthly subscription. So go check that out right now. Also, go check out our YouTube and our iTunes page. Please subscribe. Please leave us a review. We always appreciate it. We have another Sunday special that came out yesterday with Michael Shermer. You're really going to enjoy. And when you subscribe, you get that as well. We have another Sunday special next week. I'm trying to remember who we have next week. We'll get it to you tomorrow. Jason Whitlock. That's exactly right. I didn't remember how we were scheduling. So Jason Whitlock is next week. The former Kansas City Star columnist and sports columnist. We'll talk sports and everything else. So check that out as well. We are the largest, fastest growing conservative podcast in the nation.